All right, cheers and salutations. Welcome, everybody, to Americans Learn. My name is Kit. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and hit that ring bell notification. That way, all you lovely, beautiful people are made aware when we upload new content, you guessed it, upon our YouTube channel. And today, we got ourselves a fun video titled Not 1, Not 2, Not 3, Not 4, Not 5, Not 6, Not 7, Not 8, Not 9, but 10 Greatest Enemies of Rome. And let's face it, those that stand against the might of Rome must get the jackboot to the face, because Rome is glorious. And after all, the greatest shame that Europe must ever live with is knowing that Rome fell. And now look at the map of Europe. What was once the Roman Empire is now something that hurts my heart, and I blame all of Rome's enemies, those that didn't believe it. But now, folks, let's find out who these bastards are, these quote-unquote enemies of Rome, and hopefully they will face what every true Roman wants them to face, and that is true Roman justice by the end of a sword, as it should be. So let's enjoy this video. Oh, and by the way, the video has come from Spectrum, so please support the original content creators, you lovely, beautiful people. It's the right thing to do. It's the one thing to do. The original link to this video is in the description box below. So now, drink some true Roman wine. Eat some true Roman bread, make love to your true Roman wife, and let's enjoy this video in a 3, 2, and destroy Rome's enemies.
Throughout their long history, the Romans never had a shortage of enemies.
Yep,
In
haters.
this list,
They were haters. They were busters.
there are 10 names, but I could have just as easily put another 10 historical figures on this list, like Archimedes, who's not on this list. Why, you ask? Because he was just a guy doing his job, utilizing his mathematical brilliance to defend his
He was a hater.
city-state. There's no great foe in that, even if his inventions were something quite brilliant. And no, for the record, I don't buy Archimedes having invented a death ray. That sounds absurd. What about Spartacus? Nope.
Hater.
A slave rebellion, as big as it was, doesn't quite compare to this lot. Alaric? He sacked Rome after all.
And he should be chopped into many pieces.
Also nope. His sack was incredibly tame and derived almost exclusively for political reasons. Genseric's sack, for comparison, was worse, and guess what? He isn't in this top 10 either. Neither is Boudica.
Yeah, how dare she? How dare she, Boudica? How dare you?
They all remain as honorable mentions though. Once again, no beesies. Number 10, Viriathus. This is a name often unnoticed in the history of Rome. Viriathus was a Lusitanian leader who would ultimately lead a significant coalition against the Romans. This conflict is known as the Lusitanian War or the War of Fire. A bit of a Sertorius before Sertorius, Viriathus often engaged in hit-and-run and ambush tactics, repeatedly defeating the Romans on the battlefield and forcing them to, temporarily, sign a peace treaty, which also recognized Viriathus as an ally of the Roman people. This deal, however, was deemed unacceptable by the Romans, so one of the Roman commanders, Quintus Servilius Caepio, bribed 3 men close to the Lusitanian leader to assassinate him, which they did, leaving the Lusitanian resistance without a leader. In a small moment of karma, when the 3 men returned to collect their payment for doing the deed, they weren't given anything, as Caepio told them Rome does not pay traitors. With the death of Viriathus, the Lusitanian resistance had lost a leader they could count on. Though they kept resisting under a new leader, Dautulus, they were quickly defeated by the Romans. Viriathus remained as the most successful leader to have ever opposed Roman encroachment in Iberia.
And how dare he?
Number 9, Vercingetorix. From one regional resistance leader to another, Vercingetorix is definitely more famous than Viriathus, even if that is only because Vercingetorix's Roman foe was one Gaius Julius Caesar. Picked out by the various Gallic chieftains to lead Gaul's resistance against Caesar.
Now look at Vercingetorix. Looking all smug. How dare you betray Caesar's friendship? What were you fighting for? What was Gaul before Rome? All right? Rome brought plumbing, medicine, food, roads, bridges. And what is Vercingetorix going to offer? A cartoon strip. There you go. If you know what cartoon I'm referencing, I love you.
It is through Caesar's victory Vercingetorix is known for. While he couldn't exactly defeat Caesar, he did make his life difficult, employing a scorched earth strategy to deny Caesar and his legions of supplies, which may have worked had Vercingetorix been more cruel and allowed Avaricum to be razed. Since he chose not to, the Roman legions eventually captured the settlement, winning themselves some vital food and, well, slaughtering some 40,000 people. Vercingetorix would then defeat Caesar in the Battle of Gergovia, but everything
That doesn't count.
culminated in the Battle of Alesia, one of the most insane battles in history, which Caesar won, and with that victory, Vercingetorix himself was captured and the Gallic rebellion was practically crushed.
On your
Late
knees.
Mithridates VI.
Ooh.
If there's one ruler who proved to be a constant headache to the Romans, it's Mithridates. The king of Pontus was truly the last Greek effort against Roman dominance. It took the Romans not one, not two, but 3 wars to defeat him for good. And even then, that still wasn't enough to kill him. It had to be a rebellion from one of his sons to finally drive him to commit suicide.
Oh, thank goodness. Guy's already giving me a headache.
Now, one has to consider the fact. For as long as Mithridates lived, Rome was not exactly politically stable, given all the civil wars and purges going on. This was actually the biggest reason why Mithridates became such a thorn on the Roman side. At the height of his power, Mithridates had control over all of Anatolia and pretty much the entirety of the Black Sea. Throughout his struggle against Rome, among his enemies include Sulla, Lucullus, Marina, and Pompey the Great. Quite a star-studded cast. Number 7, Shapur II.
Shapur! You!
Shapur the Great, as that is also what he's known as, was a Sassanid emperor. Originally, he wasn't even hostile to the Romans, but when Constantine the Great would change all that, as he declared his empire would be the defender of all Christians, including those in Persia.
Yes.
It also didn't help Constantine had written in his will one of his nephews, Hannibalianus, was to be declared King of Kings.
Yes, exactly. But what's the problem?
And defender of all Christians in the East, an obvious provocation to Shapur II. From that point onwards, Shapur II would spend much of his reign fighting wars against the Romans, on and off. He kept those hostilities against Constantius II and then against Julian, where he managed an impressive victory, which granted the undoing of the humiliating Peace of Nisibis and the return of the lands lost in that treaty. So ultimately, he actually succeeded. He never stopped being hostile to some degree to the Romans either. What's curious about Shapur II is his overall demeanor, which depended on the proximity of a nearby imperial army, in other words, an army led by a Roman emperor. If it was far away, Shapur II acted pretty much as if he ruled the place. Then, when met by a proper Roman response, his stance would shift to, now hold on, let's talk about this.
I'm so glad. So glad that the First Crusade stood up finally against the Sassanid Empire.
The man was just a headache to deal with, primarily
Yes.
for this reason. Neither Constantius II, Julian, or Valens, the 3 Roman emperors who dealt the most with him, ever fully trusted him, mostly for this reason.
I wouldn't.
As soon as they settled for something and turned away to deal with another problem, there he was, stirring up trouble again. Number 6, Pyrrhus of Epirus.
Oh, this guy. Oh, I won, even though all my soldiers are dead. Black.
I won't be talking much about Pyrrhus of Epirus. For the time I'm writing this video, I am also writing another one which talks about Pyrrhus at a far greater length. What you need to know about him is as follows. Great general,
No.
terrible diplomat,
Yes.
chip on his shoulder,
Yes.
unbelievably ambitious.
True.
One of the greatest generals of his age, Antigonus
Debatable. Debatable if you want to call him losing all of his army and then call it a victory.
the One-Eyed actually looked at Pyrrhus and said he'd be the greatest general of his time if he lived long enough, which Pyrrhus did.
Huh.
Under the pretense
Okay.
of saving a small Greek city-state from the Romans, Tarentum, Pyrrhus hopped on a few ships alongside his armies and sailed to Italy. There he'd meet the Romans in battle. The Romans had undergone through a significant military transformation where they abandoned the Greek phalanx in favor of a new system called the maniple, which really basically was a phalanx but quite a bit more flexible. And the Romans had that. Pyrrhus had elephants. elephants stomped on Menipol. Menipol dead. So the Romans were stomped
That offended me.
the first time they faced Pyrrhus on the battlefield. The Battle of Heraclea was unquestionably a victory for Pyrrhus. Second time was the Battle of Asculum. This time the Romans had some wagons made to stop the elephants charging and almost succeeded in doing so. Except this is war and almost doesn't count, so they lost. But they had
Doesn't count.
managed to inflict quite a significant number of casualties this time around. Pyrrhus even said another victory like this and he was done for. The Battle of Asculum was a Pyrrhic victory. Get it? Pyrrhic victory?
Yes.
Pyrrhus? You see? Yeah, I'll just stop. Still, Pyrrhus was great at helping the Romans figure out how to deal with elephants. Next battle on the cards was Beneventum, and the Romans won, even capturing a few of the elephants, though that wasn't the sole reason why they won. Number 5, Attila the Hun.
The scourge of God. He must die. Majoran, kill him.
Now, this is the point where we're beginning to reach the heavies, those historical figures who carry quite a bit of weight into their name. They either drove the Romans to fear or to seething hatred. I believe it's fitting we start with the Scourge of God, Attila the Hun. The ruler of the Huns throughout the 5th century, Attila demonstrated just how fearsome the Huns were when he and his army chose to
The Huns, in which the Germanic tribes and all the barbarians embraced. Rome will never forget your treason, Germania.
cross the Danube and, to put it bluntly, annihilated pretty much everything in its path on the way to Constantinople. The only reason why he didn't take Constantinople was because the city was pretty much impregnable.
That's right.
Then he turned on the west, where he and the Roman general Flavius Aetius gathered massive
Flavius, hold the line.
coalitions of barbarians before facing each other in the Battle of the Catalonian Plains, where Attila lost? He didn't
Yes.
exactly take it very well. Next up, he invaded Italy and ravaged the south, only to be stopped by the Pope, who probably bribed him to go somewhere else. He was preparing for another campaign in the east, and then he died.
Beautiful.
Probably due to internal bleeding.
Good.
A little anticlimactic.
Good.
Number 4, Arminius.
Well, look who crawled out of Germania's underbelly. Barbarian filth.
From the Germanic perspective, Arminius is a
Look at that statue. That's even pathetic. I don't know what kind of statue that is, but it's stupid.
hero. From the Roman one, a traitor. A byproduct of the conquest of Germania, Arminius was born a Cherusci prince. And being a part of the faction of the tribe, which was friendly to Rome, he spent much of his time in the Roman military, which would acquire him a Roman citizenship and the rank of Equites. He would serve Rome in the Great Illyrian Revolt with distinction, and soon after he was sent to Germania to aid the governor Publius Quintillus Varus in completing the conquest of the region for good. In reality, however, Arminius took this opportunity to scheme against the Romans. Knowing that, on equal terms, the Germanic warriors were no match for the Romans, he ensured when the two sides met, they would not be on equal footing. His scheming culminated in
The greatest tragedy ever.
the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, where the 3 legions led by Varus were ambushed and killed. Though this eventually led to a punitive expedition led by Germanicus, which will lead to catastrophic defeats and eventually the assassination of Arminius, it was a turning
Thank you, Germanicus.
point in the history of Rome. With this battle, the imperial borders in Europe would be firmly situated in the Rhine and the Danube rivers, as ordered by Augustus.
No.
The only ones to break this were Trajan and Constantine in the Danube. In the Rhine frontier, however, the Germans were here to stay, and some 400 years later, they would play their part in the fall of Rome.
Are you happy, Germania? How'd that work out for everybody? Stupids. Stupid. Shame on you. Do you dream of the Roman Empire? I doubt it. But then, oh, hey, we could call ourselves the Holy Roman Empire. How dare you take his name and stand where he once stood?
Number 3, Brennus. Maybe the most unknown figure on this list.
Who?
Who exactly is Brennus? Why, Brennus is the first barbarian leader to have sacked Rome, of course.
Oh.
He was the leader of the Senones who defeated the Romans in the Battle of the Allia, and later besieged the city. The Romans eventually relented and agreed to pay Brennus and his men to just go away. Brennus famously tipped the scales with a sword, uttering Vae Victis, meaning woe to the conquered. Brennus's mark on the history of Rome is gargantuan. The sack of Rome was a major event in the history of the city-state, as that was the moment Rome transformed from a mere Italian city-state to the Roman Republic that would never give up in the face of catastrophe that later faced and defeated the Samnites, Hannibal, and the Greeks.
Yes.
As for the Romans themselves, well, the Gauls would have a profound effect on the Roman psyche that...
And Caesar paid them back all right. What? I'm giving an unbiased perspective.
wouldn't be healed until the conquest of Gaul by Julius Caesar. Number 2, Shapur I.
Boo.
Shapur II may have been a major headache to the Romans, but Shapur I was an existential threat to the entire Roman East. For years, as the Roman Empire was pretty much falling apart, facing God knows how many civil wars and endless barbarian invasions, welcome to the 3rd century, Shapur I had essentially a free hand in the East, facing numerous wars against the Romans. He first ensured Armenia would remain under Persian influence. Then in the next war he penetrated deep into Syria, capturing Antioch before Valerian arrived and the two engaged in campaign. Shapur would win and capture Valerian, the first time a Roman emperor was captured in battle. Shapur II would almost certainly have captured the bulk of the Roman East had it not been for Septimius Odenathus, the king of Palmyra, who saved the increasingly hopeless situation, defeating Shapur I in battle and ensuring the East would remain under Roman protection. This all the while the actual sitting emperor Gallienus was busy in Europe dealing with all the revolts and barbarian invasions he faced. Number 1, Hannibal Barca.
Oh, well, if it's in Hannibal, the Annibal, Cannibal, Barca. You.
A little obvious, yes, but when you think enemy of Rome, the first person to come into your mind is probably Hannibal. Hell, he even swore an oath of vengeance as a child, and spent almost the entirety of his life opposing Rome in some form or another. It all started as soon as the Romans signed a treaty with Saguntum, violating a treaty they had signed with the Carthaginians over both states' spheres of influence in Spain. Hannibal responded by sieging and plundering the city. As soon as Rome declared war, the man picked his army, traveled through the Alps into Italy, and delivered the Romans 3 crushing defeats, the last one so bad the Romans were desperate enough to commit actual human sacrifices.
We weren't losing, we were winning. Okay? There.
Following that, he spent the next 15 years in Italy ravaging the countryside, largely unimpeded, because most saw a direct confrontation with Hannibal a suicide. Circumstances elsewhere would eventually drive him out of Italy and back to Africa, where he would be defeated by Scipio Africanus.
Yeah, Scipio!
But he didn't stop opposing the Romans there. After trying out in politics and escaping Roman wrath by fleeing the east, Hannibal spent the rest of his life in foreign kingdoms, most notably in the court of the Seleucid Emperor Antiochus, who gave Hannibal command over a fleet where he would be defeated again, this time by Scipio's brother.
Yes, take that, Hannibal.
The Romans hated him to the point he had to kill himself to avoid capture. His final words were, "Let us relieve the Romans from the anxiety they have so long experienced, since they think it tries their patience too much to wait for an old man's death."
Yeah, well, you should have faced it like a man, you coward.
And that's the list. Hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like, comment, and if you aren't subscribed, then please do so. I'd really appreciate it. I've opened up a Patreon account, so if you'd like to support me there, there's a link in the description below. This was Spectrum, and I hope you have a fantastic time.
All right, cool. Oops, sorry about that. All right, folks. Those were the top 10 enemies of Rome. How do you view them all as enemies of Rome? In fact, would you like to see a video about maybe top 10 traitors of Rome? Because after all, these enemies and traitors brought down a glorious empire that never once did anything wrong, never once committed any crimes, and was only trying to bring civilization to a world that was beset on all sides by barbarians, witchcraft, sorcery, the dark magics, and other barbarian politics and policies. Rome was just trying to save the world, folks. I mean, come on. I'm giving an unbiased perspective. Okay. First of all, I thought this was a great video. Seriously, oh boy, I'm coughing here. Sorry about that. There was a couple people I didn't know about. Brenus was one of them. Mithridates is another one. And of course, Vertanus. You know, those were three people I never knew about. As after all, you know, we're all familiar with Hannibal, the animal cannibal, Barca. I can't even say his name. Arminius, and then of course you have Attila the Hun. Attila the Hun, bun, no fun barbarian. You got Paris, who is a great general, quote unquote. But what are your thoughts? Type your thoughts in the comment section below. Are these enemies? Did these enemies of Rome face true justice? I mean, some died of old age. Some were eventually captured and defeated. But would you have liked them to face true Roman justice? How would you, as a true Roman soldier, handle these barbarians if they were at your feet? Type in the comment section below like a true Roman should. And be sure to hit the like button and support the original content creator. It's the right thing to do. It's the one thing to do. And I expect all true Romans to do that, as you should.